Coming up, Interim, CEO of USA Rugby Ross Young, Congressman Steve Lewis, and Hall of Famer / Board of Director Phaidra Knight. Brought to you by Friends of the British Council. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up, talking rugby in Midtown Manhattan at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34. I'm Matt McCarthy, and joining me in the studio is Mr. Stephen Lewis, the debonair Scotsman, and World Rugby Hall of Fame member Phaidra Knight. Hello, Phaidra.
Hello, Matt.
Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Matthew.
All right. The pleasantries aside, we have a serious bit of business to get to, and it is what we're going to call the State of the USA Rugby Address. And we have a board member. Not only are you just a USA Rugby legend, you're a board member as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't be so enthused. And Steve, you're the congressman, the rabble-rousing congressman. And we'll be joined right after we take a break. We'll be joined by the interim CEO of USA Rugby, none other than Ross Young. All right? So let's get to it. Steve, where are we now?
We've only got 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're in a bad spot. We're in a bad spot. From a governance perspective, I think we can separate things. There's grassroots rugby. There's the actual national teams playing well. There's good stuff being done by players and coaches everywhere across the country. But from a governance perspective, the top tier, the top echelon, we're in absolute shambles. We have well-documented problems with RIM, put out in a very comprehensive article by Pat Clifton. We have issues with Rugby Channel, obviously.
Excellent article.
So we've got problems with RIM. We're on the brink of bankruptcy. We are, we have our cap in hand. We are in a bad place with regard to that. We have a board that we will need 5 board members replaced in the next couple of months. We've got Ross coming in, which is a good thing, but potentially a new CEO. So there's going to be a lot of change at the top, and a lot of change is needed. So that would be where we are now. And
How did we get here, Steve?
I think we got here because of a failed board. We had a board with a lack of a strategy. So you had a failure of strategy. You had a failure of execution. You had a failure of oversight. Not even the most minimal oversight. In short, in my opinion, you've had a complete and abject failure of leadership from the current USA Rugby board, with the exception of the international athletes and Barbara O'Brien, who's joined lately. But the rest of the board is culpable. This is their legacy. They shouldn't really be there. They should play no part in the reconstruction of our game. They have failed their membership, USA Rugby, and they need to go.
Phaidra, as a board member, is it feasible to see them all go? Will they all go peacefully, or will they go kicking and screaming?
I don't know if they will go. I mean, eventually, obviously, everyone's going to either term out or walk away. They've made it very clear. I think that lies with Congress, their fate, whether the early fate of the board members. But in terms of any early departure, from my understanding, no one has that intention. So I from my last conversations and understanding, again, it's gonna if the removal happens, it would have to happen by way of the bylaws through Congress.
So that to that point, something that's happened of late, we have a current sort of understaffed board, even though it's sort of lame duck anyway. But with the resignations of Barrett and Keck, you're 2 people down. So Congress had a call last night, and we're looking to create essentially a transitional board. So we want to place a couple of board members on there, just to keep an eye on things during this very tricky 2-3 month transitional period once we get past the World Cup, which is critical for our union. That's a success. So we, in order to, unfortunately, we're hamstrung by very restrictive bylaws. So in order to change those, we have to get a 2/3 written vote, and we agreed that last night. So Congress is changing the bylaws in order to get 2 new board members seated. No guarantee the current board will agree to that. And the time frame is also something I feel needs to be, time is of the essence. This needs to happen now, yesterday. But unfortunately, in order to do it in a compliant, legal manner, it takes a little bit of time. So that's what Congress is doing, is trying to get 2 new board members seated, transitional board members.
Well, of course, as you stated, there's no guarantee that the board collectively will agree to that. I certainly am a big proponent of a transitional board. I think it's important that we have the right people in place right now who can guide this process and, appropriately restructure. It's a very important, critical time. And so, I'm of the opinion that it's something we definitely need, strongly need.
I mean, the bottom line is, why would you trust the people who dug the hole to get you out of the hole? I mean, why rely on a failed board to get us out of the crisis? We need some fresh faces. We need some independent input.
Well, looking from the outside, in the time that you've been on Congress and you've been on the board of directors, there's been some remarkable change. Right?
What, change in personnel or change in policy?
No, but change in personnel, and I think that's the precursor to change in policy.
And again, without painting a sort of dystopian future here, right? I mean, it's going to be. It's always darkest before
It'd be great.
It's always darkest before the dawn, right? So that's kind of where we are now, and we're going to have a good World Cup Sevens. We've got a man in place in an interim CEO. We're going to have a new board. Things aren't all the bleak midwinter. We're going to get out of this, but before we get out of it, before we move forward, we have to acknowledge what happened and how we got here. And those people who got us here should be accountable.
I agree with you. I've made it very clear that I agree with the fact that there has to be some accountability. There has to be some responsibility taken for what we're currently dealing with. And I understand that because we've been managing crisis after crisis after crisis, that we haven't been able to really put any attention to that. But that has to happen. That day has to happen. Now, as you said, there is light right at the end of the tunnel. And one of the great things is a group of IAs. The IAs, I would be comfortable to say, particularly the women, international athletes, in conjunction with Ken Pape, Carrie Hefferman of the Women's Leadership Council, Danita Knox, a group of us have gotten together and constructed an amendment to the bylaws, which would mimic what Canada just pushed across the line a few weeks ago.
It's at 40%?
Yeah, minimum 40%, maximum 60% per gender to represent our board. So it would give us a much more diverse board, balanced board, and it's been shown, time and time again, companies that operate with this type of structure are far more successful.
All right, we're getting the word that we have to break for commercial, but I want to get any quick final thought before we bring on Ross, because we're going to move ahead with Ross and see what he has to say.
Yeah, well, I think to Phaidra's point there, it's something most Congress members will and should get behind is, we've had some major comprehensive gender inequity issues, from budgeting to board representation to opportunities for players. I mean, right down the board. I think this is a very good initiative and a good start to addressing some of those inequities.
Absolutely. And World Rugby obviously started this with their appointment of several women, I think, 17? The number I'm not quite certain on, but they expanded their council to include a number of women out of real demand. And so I think every union in the world needs to follow suit. Big kudos to Canada for really getting the ball rolling and being the first union to do so. We need to be the second ones on that train.
So, very quick question, Phaidra, you may or may not know. What is the current representation of women in U.S. membership? Is about 35-40? Is that about right?
Around 35-40, yeah. But by 2025, which is we've always, I think we've always operated as a union in the now, which is in one respect great. But you have to look ahead, right? Which is a part of strategic planning, which is a part of, really setting up a calendar. We have to look at what we're going to be and where we're going to be, in 7 years, right? So by 2025, 40%, at least 45% of the rugby playing population will be women. Our boardrooms need to reflect that.
All right. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with the interim CEO of USA Rugby, Mr. Ross Young, after this.
Been blind since I was 4, and I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste. And my beer's Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap Up. We're back with the second half of our State of the USA Rugby Address. And on the horn with us, we have Mr. Ross Young. In the studio, we have Mr. Steve Lewis and Phaidra Knight. I'm Matt McCarthy. Ross, welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's great to be online with you.
Ross, for the folks at home that don't know this, you're a very tall man, and I'm just wondering if that's a prerequisite for being on the sinking ship that is USA Rugby.
Prerequisite, it might be a bit of a hindrance, but no, more than happy to be part of the rewriting of that ship, and hopefully be the mast we can hang a few sails off and get the ship going back in the right direction.
Well,
Touche. Well done. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Well done is right. Just quickly, are you an Edinburgh man?
Edinburgh born and bred, for sure.
He went to some minor affiliate school, starts with an F, but we won't hold his schooling against him.
So are you guys going to get along? Because he's Glasgow, you're Edinburgh. This is kind
Lesky, Edinburgh.
Yeah. We've settled these disputes before. We're in good terms these days.
It's not like Boston versus New York, right? It's kind of a little bit more friendly.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that.
And there we have
It's not really a contest in most areas, so yeah.
All right, anyway, we can get to that in another segment. But, Ross, in our previous segment, Phaidra and Steve were talking about the problems that have occurred historically, and now we're at a point with you at the helm, at least on an interim basis, of going forward. So where do we go from here? What are some of the positives?
I think there's lots of positives. Steve's alluded to them earlier, the performance of the national teams, the amount of rugby that's being played. You look at the activity around the MLR and the press that it's getting. We've got a huge opportunity with the World Cup in San Francisco in a couple of months. We've got another great opportunity to springboard off the rugby weekend with Ireland, Italy, and then both the men's and women's national 15s in really good, meaningful games. So, there's always opportunity. There always has been opportunity. I think, and undoubtedly there are issues. There have been issues. What we've got to do now is take stock, regroup, and it really needs to be all of us. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be the board. It's not going to be Congress. It just needs to be proper, collective desire and strategy to move forward together. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to be able to do everything at once, but we need to all regroup and drive things forward.
What was the most alarming thing that you found that you didn't anticipate when you took over?
I don't think there's anything alarming that I didn't know. If you look at the amount of information out there, some of it officially provided, others, in general speculation. We've got issues. We've had issues. I don't think there's been any huge secrets unveiled. It's Steve mentioned at the very start of the piece. There have been some wrong decisions made, and we've gone too far down certain roads that we've now got to close everything up. And it really is an opportunity to reboot with some, with the right stakeholders and groups, including the likes of World Rugby, to help and guide us, to, let's say, put things back together again, because it's just seize the opportunities, and collectively we need to do that. And I've had a number of discussions with different people, and people say, well, who are we? I don't want to exclude anyone. We's all of us, and all of us need to be responsible, and all of us need to dig in and make this work. Because I'm here. I came to the US originally, and still here, and wanted to take on this role because I think the opportunities is certainly there. So
there won't be any public executions in the square as far as you're concerned right now, on just to establish your stamp.
Public. I'm just looking out the windows. Not sure if there's a car park. There's a couple of very small trees, but
we can get media there.
It's.
But Ross,
I would make sure we do things properly with the right rationale. Certainly not give any public floggings. I don't think anybody in the national office. I mean, there's a large group of people here that have worked incredibly hard. But again, Steve alluded to earlier, and without repeating, is that governance happens at various different levels, from World Rugby, from Congress, from the board, all the way down. And a great believer we need to start at the top, and then it needs to cascade down properly. Pointless me charging around now like a bull in a china shop and changing everything, and then a new board coming in and us going through a strategic planning, operational planning, financial planning exercise, and realise that was the wrong thing. I think we have to take stock, and we have to do it properly, and that has to be from the top down.
Steve?
Yeah. So on a personal level, I mean, there you are living a nice, quiet life up in leafy suburbs of Seattle, and here you are. You've grasped the poison chalice. So what's your motivation? Obviously, you have a deep rugby background. I think most people would know, but noblesse oblige. Why are you doing this? Why are you helping us out in our time of trouble?
I genuinely want to. I mean, the amount of people. People ask me the same question: why did I come here 4.5 years ago and probably have a bit of a restart? And that was coming me and speaking at a couple of conferences, because the desire and passion to make it work is still there, and I've bought into that. And to me, it is the opportunity. Somebody needs to do it. I think with my experience and the diversification of my experience working in France, New Zealand, Australia, the UK, is going to hopefully give everyone a benefit. I don't know all the answers. When you look at how rugby's organised and structured, it's different in every country. So you have to find what works in your environment. And I mean, on this show and various other outlets over years, it's well documented, the geography, the weather, the NCAA regulations, age grade competitions. It's tough when you've got an environment this size. I feel that the time is right now to step in and help wherever I can, which is why when I was asked to step in, I didn't want to just take an interim role. So the opportunity to come on board as the COO and interim CEO is whatever happens with leadership moving forward. I want to be here to give that bit of continuity through the past, the present, and hopefully what's going to be a good future.
So just to clarify then, so currently you're interim CEO, but are you interested in being permanent CEO, or if not, are you still remaining on board as COO? So are you staying on board? Yeah.
That's why I've sort of given up my long-term commitments with Activists and certainly not relinquished all day-to-day responsibilities, is to be able to do that, because we've touched on it a few times during this particular conversation, is we're going to need a bit of continuity. So yes, I've given a commitment to be around in the long term in that COO role. Yes, I've declared an expression of interest as for being the permanent CEO, and but whatever happens, I'll support what happens for the right reasons, because again, it comes down to what I said is I want it to be a we. It's going to take more than one person to do this, and I feel whatever is decided from the governance structure down, if they don't feel that I'm the appropriate, they need someone with other skill sets, then I want to be able to support that person and to take things forward.
Ross, not to put you under the spotlight, but I
Go
want to go
for
back.
it, Phaidra.
I want to go
Put
back
him
to
under
the
the spotlight.
to the equity subject. Obviously, there's been really prominent disparities in funding to the women, in opportunities, per diem, you name it. It's been apparent since the beginning of the women's program in the U.S. Right? How do you think you can contribute to bridging that disparity? And do you think your influence, because of your history with World Rugby, could play a role in even helping solicit funding from World Rugby, as they do? They provide a grant to our men's 15s. Do you think you can play a role in maybe helping us activate that kind of grant to our women?
Undoubtedly. like the relationships I have with other senior figures around the world and with World Rugby staff, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's obviously economics to bear as there always is, and currently the men's 15 World Cup is it's the biggest single driver of revenue for World Rugby. And having the US compete at that level gives us the knock-on effect because you get more financial viability. It's yes, but I want equality, I want equity. I want to have it as I want to have all those elements in place. I want to do everything I can to be able to help. But it is going to be, I think, like everything that we decide we're going to do moving forward, they all have to be prioritised, and and we've got to work through each of them. We're not going to be able to do everything at once, but putting those type of things in place make definitely a priority.
And I know there's been a lot of talk, amongst the board and just general interest in USA Rugby hosting a men's World Cup. I don't know if it'll be 2023, 2027, right? But there's a women's World Cup coming up. There's obviously World Rugby released just earlier this week, a new bidding process for that. Why
not go for that?
Why not go for a 2021 bid for the Women's World Cup? I think it's a remarkable opportunity, and if we can sell more tickets to date for the Sevens World Cup, right, than any World Cup has done before, why can't we do the same for women's 15s?
We have, and I agree with you. I think the Rugby World Cup 2018 has been a much harder slog than it should have been, because the tender phase, the tender acceptance, and I think some of the criteria that were out there to start with, against the reality of what was required, was it just didn't add up as it should have done. Rosie and the team in San Fran have done a phenomenal job to get us to where we are, and you say currently with the biggest selling ticket sales of any World Cup sevens, and we've got a long way to go.
But Ross,
a potential to do a lot more, but it's we have to, before we start entering a tender process and committing to something, we have to make sure it's financially viable, that we can deliver it, and to do that we need we probably need partners that are going to assist as part of that process from the off, be that a city, be that a region, be it tourism agencies. We've got to have proper ducks in a row before we start
throwing bids around. Yeah. So Ross, if you could look into that CEO crystal ball there that's in the office off camera, what is in the future for Rugby International marketing and the Rugby Channel?
I can't really say the detail around that. I think that'll be out for everyone to see in the near future. I think the one thing that's plainly clear is commercial entities that act on or behalf of the national governing body, have to be more aligned and have to come under the same corporate governance structure. And I think that's probably about as much as I can go with for now. Is we need to ensure that whatever happens with those entities moving forward, that they all come under one transparent umbrella.
How catastrophic is the financial situation, specifically in light of the World Cup sevens in San Francisco and the match in Washington, D.C. with South Africa and Wales?
The situation is not great, but we've put enough into it. We've put enough structure and solutions in place so that those events won't be affected, and that we and also the union can operate. So the financial implications will obviously have an ongoing effect on a year-to-year basis. But I think the important criteria of deliverables against UOC deliverables, World Rugby deliverables, events, and making sure that those two events that you mentioned are delivered to an incredibly high standard that allows us to, as I said earlier, to use as a springboard and hopefully with that comes a little bit more financial success that we can that we can build on also.
All right, and also I have a Twitter exchange going on with the big cheese over at the Cardiff Blues, who wants to throw down the gauntlet of a Cardiff versus Team USA match in Cardiff because Blaine Scully helped them win their Challenge Cup. You got any answer to that? He's going to come on the show next week, Richard Holland.
Any opportunity for the US team to play. So if that's an open invite and he's going to take us across there, then it's certainly something worth exploring, that's for sure.
Boom. Stephen, final question?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to Ross's final comment. So what we've been doing is a lot of successful triage work, right? People like Mark Lamborn, John Bobbitt with RIM, some new board members, yourself coming in, the World Cup Sevens, which is the project right now. That looks like it's going better. Everyone needs to get there. If you haven't bought a ticket, you need to be in San Francisco. It's a reason to be there. We're in a bad place, but it's only us that can dig ourselves out of it by being honest and working hard. So welcome aboard.
Wow.
I love it. The new Stephen Lewis.
Trying to finish positive. Trying to be positive. Good coaching. Always finishing a positive upbeat.
You must be Scottish because there's no way in hell he does that with anybody else.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Thank you, Ross, for jumping in and rolling your sleeves up, just digging in.
You're certifiably insane, sir. I got to tell you that.
Yep.
There's a few said that.
All right, thanks. On behalf of Mr. Ross Young, a very patient Mr. Ross Young, and Steve Lewis, and of course the Hall of Famer Phaidra Knight, I'm Matt McCarthy at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in New York City for Rugby Wrap Up, signing off.